Social Security is more than just a retirement and disability and health system. It is also a system of minimum wages to make everything go round, complete this circle. And our guest today is unique because he has been a leader in all of these areas. Salomon's plan, developed with the mayor of Mexico City, Angel Mancera, is to increase the minimum daily wage in Mexico City, hence indirectly to all of Mexico, from U.S. $5.12 today to $6.44 today, immediately by 2015, and by 2018 reach $13 a day, which would be revolutionary by Mexico standards. It's been $5.12 a day for decades. Salomon served as CEO of Deconsa, which is a state-operated enterprise in charge of supplying food and staples to 20,000 rural communities. And this from 2006 to 2009. He modernized it, made it administratively efficient, and revolutionized that system and got to know the problems of the rural sector. And that's the social contribution of the greatest, and social security contribution of the greatest sense. Following that, he was named in 2009 as the director of, the commissioner of the Social Protection Program, Seguro Popular. This is a parallel system to the Mexican Institute of Social Security, which people pay into. This is for the poor who have no money to pay into a system, and Salomon was able to make this universal health coverage for 49 million people a reality. Legally a reality. To be able to get it all into force over time, and given the difficult circumstances of those rural development communities he worked in for those 3 years, it's going to be it's a challenge for Mexico. But here's another aspect of the situation that he knows personally. So he's been a leader in these two spheres. In 2011, he was appointed National Minister of Health. Who has this kind of experience? Nobody I know of in the world can talk about Social Security as he can. Currently, now as director of Mexico City's economic development, he realized that if you don't increase and pay for the productive development of Mexico, as he will explain, how can Mexico take off and how can it overcome its negative image to investors around the world who see Mexico as one of the lowest minimum wage countries in the world, and certainly in Latin America, very poorly off. So he's got to create the situation for economic mobility and educational reforms to create new jobs and to reform the system at this angle. And this will be carried through till 2018, and time for, of course, working in this reality. Maybe by 2017 you'll be looking for new positions. Well, we will support you anyway. Because we want to see this, and we want to be part of working with you here at UCLA in Los Angeles. We have the you made an initiative. You're making an initiative with Chicago. And now want to make an initiative with Los Angeles, and we hope UCLA will be the base for us to discuss these ideas and this historical trajectory that you've analyzed here. This is one of the best analysis of statism and anti-statism I've ever seen, which is what we have to face today in the world, is what is the role of the state going to be, and how are we going to solve all the problems that will make the private sector work. The article in the Wall Street Journal titled on Mexico's city minimum wage proposal, the article by August 28, 2014 is actually very good. That said, some people say, well, the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal has excellent analysis, which is it's quite separate from the editorial opinion. So I have to read the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Los Angeles Times, and 3 Mexican newspapers every day, including La Opinion here, to keep up. It's challenging for us all. And thanks to Raul Lomelí, who's my co-director here, for his huge role in organizing this event. And Raul, would like to make a few comments?
Well, thank you, Salomon, for accepting our invitation. Just with the one condition that you said, that let it be open, let's have a dialogue. Let's have a good group of people that can participate among the audience. We have graduate students, we have professors, we have community members, and that message will be taken. But to make this complete, we're delighted that our dear friend, Ingeniero Raúl Rodríguez Barroso, accepted to come from San Antonio to be the commentator for your presentation. We thank him because he's absolutely the right person to do this. In his newest of roles, he wears many caps, and all of them very important. He's now the chairman of the U.S.-Mexico Foundation. And he has had a long trajectory of really linking both of our countries, which really, when we talk about people, is one. He's former Secretary of Economic Development in his home state of Tamaulipas, but also has done a phenomenal job of really developing the northwest, like Iñigo will say, that the northmost city of Mexico in San Antonio, where he was the CEO for the North American NAB North American Development Bank. But he also has several caps as chair and chairs several committees and important committees across many institutions, many universities, and we very much look forward to hearing his comments on the presentation that you're about to provide. So with that, again, Salomon, thank you for accepting our invitation. We hope this is the first one of many, and that as we begin to work and collaborate, like Dr. Wilkie has mentioned, so in touch as he always does. We always say that Dr. Wilkie is a Mexican trap in a gringo's body, and that is true because his commitment is about social justice, and his commitment is to las causas justas that you speak so often of. So with that, we look forward right now to your presentation, and if you would indulge us with it, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for all the work that you have done for so many years, Professor Wilkins. As Raul was saying, on the just causes, and you are an inspiration for all of us that we are working to try to do a little in public policy on the same trajectory that you have show us for many years. So it is great to be with you. To the two Raúls, especially to my dear friend Raúl Lomelí for his kind invitation. And thank you, everyone. In particular today, I want to talk about a common issue between probably our two cities. Because in the U.S., in many cities, and at the national level, we are discussing increases in the minimum wage. In Mexico, we have very special and very particular things that we are discussing around the minimum wage. So I want to show you what Miguel Ángel Mancera, the chief of the government of Mexico City, has proposed as the recovery policy of the minimum wage. But before that, just to set, I would say, just to set some of the Mexican realities, I would want to point out what had happened over the last decades in Mexico in some aspects. I would want to talk a little bit about demography in Mexico, because it's very interesting what is happening about demography right now. A little bit of democracy and politics in Mexico, a little bit about our macroeconomic stability and how we learned the hard way to have macroeconomic, very stable and very serious work done over the last decades, and a little bit about the social network, what Professor Wilkins calls the social security. We have discussed it already. I prefer to talk about it as the social protection network because the social security since the late 90s, well, the centuries, with Bismarck in Germany, always social security has to do with your laboral status. And I truly believe there are some fundamental rights that do not have anything or should not have anything to do with your laboral status, but with your right as a human being, as it is held, which is something that the U.S. has to think about. But that is another issue. Today I'm only talking about the minimum wage, so if you allow me. So again, I want to talk about Mexico today, about demographics, the structural change in terms of economy, and the political part of Mexico has a very special momentum in terms of its demography. We are still a country in which our median age is between 26 and 29 years of age. Only 10% of our population is above 60 years of age. So we are still a very young population. That is not going to, the next one please, that it's not going to last forever because we are living a real demographic change from an old children society to a more productive society, but still, the next one, that is a huge opportunity. The next one, please. Because the dependency rate over the next 25 years is going to be on its minimum over our history. That is, the less people that depend on people working, and the vast majority of the Mexican population in the possibility of being productive. The next one. So we have a real window of opportunity if we just see the demographic part of Mexico. Still, in order to use that demographic bonus, we need to create jobs, and we need to create well-paid jobs if we really want to think about that as a bonus and not as a problem. The next one. I would also want to set into a discussion that we have really lived over the last 30 years a real political and democratic change. From an hegemonic party in which opposition was only testimonial really, to very competitive parties that are a real part of our political day-to-day life. From a presidential, constitutional, with meta capabilities, that is a president that could do almost everything in the country, to a bounded presidentialism, that is a president that has its limits. For example, in Mexico, at least until the early 90s, the legislative and the judicial powers were really they second the presidential power. Today we have a real granted independence between the parties. We had a constitutional or formal federalism, but it was really centralism in which, again, the president was the main figure, and everything that happened around the country was because the will of the president. Today we have different levels of government which are really empowered. We passed from a system in which unions, social organizations were really depending on the figure of the president to a much more empowered social groups and a real development. We passed from a system in which elections happened, but there was not a real competition in those elections. You did know what was going to happen at any election in the country. Today we have very highly competitive elections. We had restrictive electoral laws. Today we have a very open electoral system. The next one, please. You can see this timetable in which from 89 until today, 23 out of 32 local states governments have experienced political alternation. This was not a reality before 89. Again, it is funny to say, but I mean, we're talking about 25 years in which the first alternation with another political party in a state started, and since 97, we're talking about 17 years. Mexico City has been ruled by a leftist government, a different party than the party that has been ruling the federal government. Two parties have been ruling since 97, the federal government, and the Mexico City government has been ruled by a leftist government. The next one, please. Our Congress is, since 97 again, it hasn't had a majority of any party since those days, and that is important. I mean, we have a very competitive, tremendously divided Congress, which is very hard in many ways, but in political and democratic terms, it has been a very good reality. The next one. I have to say that since 94, 96, our last external, I would say internal economic crisis, because it was created by us. We had a huge macroeconomic stability. There is this even a psychological problem in Mexico, in which we feel that inflation and instability is the biggest monster of all. And I would say we have been working very hard in order to have macroeconomic stability. And in many terms, I think we are an example for the world in how to adjust your belt and how to be very responsible on your public deficit, on your again on your expenditure and your external debt. We have been really very responsible with all the costs that it represents being such a responsible entity. The next one. The next one. The next one. And the next one. Thank you. No. As Professor Wilkins was saying, we have also really worked on a social security network. I mean, Mexico today has, and I'm just going to set it as an example, Mexico has universal health coverage again. Protection for health in Mexico is a right, not as in the US. In Mexico it is a right, and everyone in Mexico has protection for health with the capabilities and the possibilities that that system, a growing and a good system, can offer, but everyone has a possibility of accessing health care since pregnancy to your last day in life. But so we really have a system, and that has been very good for life expectancy and for the welfare of the population in general. The next one. The next one. But everything that I said, it was part of the, or at least setting a scenario for what I want to share with you this morning. So we have a real demographic bonus. We have a very dynamic political and democratic system. We have macroeconomic stability. We have a very good social protection network, probably some of the best poverty combat programs in the world. Our programs have been a model of cash transfer programs around the world, whatever, but still half of the Mexican population lives in poverty. We are one of the more unequal countries. We have the richest man on earth. Well, it depends on the month that you see but yes, in Mexico we have the richest man on earth. But still, there are half of the population that cannot have the basic necessities covered. And one of the reasons is that although everything that we have done well, Mexico has not grown in the last 30 years. If you see this graph, the growth in the 80s, 90s, and the decade from 2000 to 2010, we haven't really grown. Our economic growth has been really nothing. So without growth, it is very difficult to get people out of poverty. Again, as I was telling you, not only 52% of our population is in poverty, but around 20% of our population is on extreme poverty. And again, I need to stretch this out. We're talking about the 14th largest economy in the world. In this scenario, what Major Miguel Ángel Mancera from Mexico City has been shouting is that social policy has been very important, macroeconomic stability is very important, but we need to do more, and we need to do it faster if we want to have a more cohesion community in our country. And one of the tools that we have is minimum wage. Minimum wage, it's a real possibility. It's a completely well studied policy. We have more than 100 years in the world with minimum wage experiences, so we really have the possibility to study it and to see which are the possible impacts of it and how you can develop a recovery minimum wage policy in order to secure the minimum for people that are working a complete laboral journal, and with that combating not only poverty but inequality. So Miguel Ángel Mancera, in May, he asked a group of experts, among them the most well-recognized economists in Mexico, and lawyers and historians, and to create an expert group and develop and help him develop a minimum wage policy. The next one. We have that proposal. It is the one that Professor Wilkie was showing you, and now Raúl has in his hands. And that document has been introduced not only to the country, but it is part today of the Senate working pieces, the Congress, the Legislative Assembly of Mexico City, the next one. We have been working with the Labor Secretary, the Treasury Secretary, the Bank of Mexico, because the central banks are always on the idea that inflation is our main objective above everything else. But we have been working with all the key actors in the country. Let me show you some of the key points about the proposal. This is probably it shows exactly what we want. If you see the middle column, it represents the minimum wage today, the monthly minimum wage today in Mexico, which is $152.93 for a worker that works 8 hours a day in the formal sector. Again, and please follow me. We're talking about a country that has some of the richest men in the earth. So we're talking about the 14th largest economy in the world. We're talking about a very vibrant and very modern and a huge economy, but the worker that earns the less earns $152.93 a month. Our goal in a first momentum, that is in 2015, is that at least the minimum wage has to cover the basic food basket. That is, a full-time worker in the formal sector cannot be poor in terms of what he can eat. So we're talking about a first